Because it's so simple. If you're really clear about what the problem is or what the issue is that you're trying to work through, that series of why can really help you dig deeper and deeper into what is that root cause, right? What is that ergonomic issue in your life, figuratively, that perhaps could use some adjusting.
Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing swell.
Good.
All right, what's on your mind today?
So today, I thought we could talk about getting to the root cause and why that's important.
Okay. Why? Why are we talking about that?
Okay.
What brought that on?
What was the spark?
Yeah.
So this past week, or maybe I can't remember. So since I started my new job, my shoulders have been so tight.
Like more than usual?
More than usual, full of knots. I was getting headaches.
Oh, geez.
And I normally don't get headaches with my shoulder tension, but I was starting to get that really tense feeling. And so I went to start getting some physical therapy for it, getting dry needling, things like that. I also have worked on strengthening my muscles in my back, my shoulder, and my neck to try and address the tension issues.
Mm-hmm.
During my first appointment, the physical therapist I met with said, I do ergonomic assessments. It's actually really nice. They have a kind of a clinic on site of where I work. So she said, just come and get me, bring me to your office, and I'll help adjust your workstation the way it needs to be. I thought, okay. I don't think I've ever had a physical therapist do that before at work. So I said, I'm going to take her up on it. So she came to my office. She went through all the things, adjusted my chair, adjusted my standing desk height so I knew where it should be from a sitting standpoint, from a standing standpoint. And the thing that threw me, because I knew a lot of this stuff, right? But the thing that threw me the most was she moved my keyboard to the very edge of my desk. So my elbows were right by my side as I'm typing. And
like a little T-Rex.
I felt like a T-Rex, yes.
Now you know how I feel all the time.
I suppose. But I don't think I have ever done that. I've never had my keyboard that close to me.
Mm.
And it has taken a little bit to get used to. And in fact, I often find myself putting it about a foot back onto my desk.
Oh, geez.
Like it typically is. When she was working with me, she said, some of this is where a lot of that tension is starting because you're reaching as you're typing. And I type a lot all day for what I do. And so it got me thinking about, until you really address the root cause, the tension doesn't really go away. And although I have that physical piece, I think that really translates well into the work we do when we're working with projects, life, work. And I thought it would be fun to talk about.
The first thing that pops in my head with that is what I'm learning when I go to my personal training.
Sure.
Is the symptom isn't always the source. The source of your pain isn't your back.
Right.
It's where the symptom is. It's the way that your posture is, or the way that you're reaching forward. And I'm finding that with my lower back and my hips. And why is my knee sore? It's like, or why is my foot sore? Or it's all connected.
Yeah.
And where the pain isn't necessarily where I need the most attention.
Right, because you can treat the symptom, right? You can ice it. You can, they did
right?
kinetic tape and did a posture adjustment.
Yeah.
I mean, they can do that. But until you actually address the cause of it, root cause, it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
One thing I wrote down, and I know this wasn't something that I asked you to really think of, but why is it important to dig into what is the root cause? Although we've been talking about physical examples, of that root cause. There are also examples of why it's important to get to that, just from a project standpoint, a life standpoint, a work standpoint. And some of those, really getting to that root is important because it can help you effectively solve the problem. If you don't know what's at the core, you aren't going to be able to be effective in solving it. Also, it can inform your decision making, right, around how you're going to approach something. And it can also help you do some of those preventative measures, like preempt things. Yeah, those were the big things I was thinking.
I feel like there's probably several anecdotes that people use in like seminars or something that talk about like, you can run around all day doing X, Y, or Z, but if it's not actually fixing the real cause, you're wasting your time and your resources. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's what's like popping in my head, and I don't sit in seminars very often, so I don't know. Or like, professional development days, like I don't really go to those very much. So it's like it's important to find the root cause so that you're not wasting your energy and your resources.
Right. This might be an analogy or an example, but like my garden. If things aren't growing in my garden, I need to figure out not what's wrong with the plant necessarily. I often have to dig deeper. Did I amend the soil? Do I have moles that are like running amok underneath the garden and eating whatever the heck they want and the roots of everything, right? Like I think there's so much that you have to dig into and consider that you might not even be able to see if you just say, oh, I'm going to treat the one thing I'm seeing.
So that makes me think of how important it is to see and like awareness.
Mm-hmm.
The last couple times now we've brought up David Brooks's book.
Yeah, we're going to have to do an episode on that.
Well,
I'll have to dig back in.
We're going to talk about a little piece of it here.
Okay,
because
good. Please.
I just listened to this part today. And also, quick aside, like, how we were talking about how just, keeping a streak going or the consistency and just 5 minutes or 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I went to put his book on and I listened for maybe 5 sentences and I had to stop. I made a note and that's what I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to get through the book, but it's because I'm going to keep going back to it. I might only get 30 seconds in a listen, but I'm chipping away at it. So I pressed play on it. It was talking about like perception and seeing, right? Hold on, let me grab it real quick. Like when we're seeing something, our eyes and our brain are saying, what is this similar to? And what do I expect next? Right? And the thing that really stood out to me is he goes, so seeing is an active process of prediction and correction, that awareness. And so what?
Can you say it one more time?
Our perception, seeing, it's an active process of prediction. I'm seeing something. What do I think is going to happen next? And then seeing what happens next and correcting.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes things don't happen as we expect. After I heard that, what popped in my head was, oh yeah, my awareness. And I talked with you or maybe even on here before when the air conditioning froze up.
Yeah.
I knew there was a problem, but I didn't see the root cause until the next day.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was frozen up. I thought something else was leaking. So when you were brought up this root cause, that popped in my head is like how powerful it can be to have those perception skills of taking the time to actually see what's happening and not just assuming. And it's in our nature to look for patterns. And okay, something like this happened before. Like that's what I did in the furnace room when there was water running. I'm like, okay, the last time I saw water running, this happened.
Yeah.
It took me longer to correct than I would have liked. And looking for the root cause of something, if you've never seen something like that, it might take a little longer, but I think that's why it's important to get to the root of something.
Yeah.
So it saves you time, energy, all the resources. I just keep saying that over and over.
No, but it is important because I think you can just spin if you don't.
Or walk away and hope it fixes itself, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
I've done that.
Not a great strategy. Yeah.
It isn't a great strategy, but I've done it.
You gotta like, oh, I have to adult. Dang. Well, maybe I don't. Like, I come back and the problem's still there. Oh, great. It didn't magically disappear.
Right. Exactly. Okay. One thing I want to talk to you about is what I've learned in kind of doing a root cause analysis. So
This is going to get nerdy.
it's a little nerdy.
Awesome. It's probably helpful.
It's a little nerdy, but I think we can bring it back to some practical real life applications. So when you're going through and trying to really get to the root cause of why something is happening, one of the easiest things that you can do, and it's actually a core of root cause analysis, is asking why 5 times.
Oh, that's from like the Toyota production.
Yes. Yep, you got it. Laura didn't make it up. It's
No.
people know that.
People probably know.
I hope they know that. It's a technique.
Yeah, they refer to the technique as the 5 whys, right?
Yeah, 5 whys.
And it was like, it developed and refined, streamlined their production.
Yep.
So anyway.
So in previous environments where we've been perplexed by the data, right? In particular of why are we seeing this play out in the data and we don't know why? That is a technique that always gets us to something where as a facilitator, you really say, okay, so let's clearly define what is the problem that we're seeing here. For example, a problem we typically see is students aren't graduating from this specific program, X, Y, or Z, just using it as a generic example. And so then you can say, well, why aren't students graduating, right? And so the answer might be, well, students are stopping out after the second semester. Like, well, why are they stopping out? Well, this class is very difficult in the second semester and half the students don't pass it. Okay, well, why don't half the students pass it? And so you kind of go down that route of why?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Was that 5? Where eventually you come onto a nugget of something that you can really find more actionable to influence. And so when you're doing it, at least from a root cause analysis standpoint, it's important to have diverse perspectives at the table. So it's not necessarily just yourself. It's important to really be open and honest, have honest conversations and not try and sugarcoat things or really sweep things under the rug, and have honest conversations about assumptions you're making in each of those why statements. This was something that just recently Mel Robbins had on her podcast, kind of that idea of, I think she framed it as ways to change your life. I think that's what it was. I believe she had a guide that accompanied her. It wasn't an episode, but it was more like a workshop type thing. But she did it with her daughter. She did it with other people, just around things, not necessarily from a work standpoint, but personally.
That's my experience with this little exercise. I was in a few-week seminar with a cohort online. The facilitators did a version of this, and it was more of like, when you think of finding your why, like Simon Sinek's, like, you're kind of like, what's your North Star? What's your driving purpose of why you do the things? It was more like in that avenue. And I was like, oh, that was really powerful. And it was really uncomfortable at first. And so I'm like, oh, I can see why it's so important to keep investigating and asking that question, because it helps you drill down to the real thing that you're trying to say that maybe I was like hiding from myself, or, kind of thing. So it was really powerful. So Mel Robbins was doing the similar thing, it sounds like.
She was, yeah. And I like the application because it was more focused on a personal goal or a personal thing you were pursuing that you were getting stuck. And so I think that could be a really useful, because it's so simple. If you're really clear about what the problem is or what the issue is that you're trying to work through, that series of why can really help you dig deeper and deeper into what is that root cause, right? What is that ergonomic issue in your life, figuratively, that perhaps could use some adjusting?
Yeah. It makes me think when we were going to the baby classes,
Okay.
when we're expecting the first time.
Sure.
And they did that exercise with us where we wrote down on like on note cards or post-its everything that we wanted as part of like the birth plan.
Sure.
So you have everything written down like on your 15 post-its or whatever. Obviously, one of the post-its on everybody's was like, because they kind of prompted you to, it was just like the main goal here is to have a healthy birth with a healthy child.
Yep.
And so then with all the other handful of cards, the next part of the exercise was like, okay, so now take away 4 cards. And then now take away another 4, and on and on. And the point was everybody in the class, the last card they had left was to have a healthy child after delivery. And so it was really focusing you in on like, this is what we're here for. Like, yes, we're going to try to have your music playing. Yes, we're going to try to have the lights dimmed to 30% or, whatever, or yes, we're going to try to make sure that this scented candle is going or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Not that they probably let you have candles in a
probably
birthing suite. But, so it's like really honing in on what is our intent and really getting clear on that allows you to, I think you said earlier, choose the action steps that are going to get you there. Because like I'm thinking even like, okay, if my goal is to like help child to learn guitar, I need to be really focused on anything I'm trying to teach him. My objective is to help support him in learning guitar. Therefore, anytime I try to offer him any advice, I need to think of that versus how I think it should be or ought to be, right? Like my own perceptions of what I think is good for learning might not be the same for him.
Sure.
So what's going to make him the best guitar player that he can be, kind of thing. So anyway, I'm probably going off on a weird little tangent, but just getting really clear on maybe the purpose and the intent will help inform the actions we take.
Right. Or really, I'm hearing it more inform the, like if you were to go through this 5 whys, identifying what you're stuck on or what the issue is, it helps you get really clear about what is the issue, because the issue is what's preventing you from your why.
Yeah, I think one thing that popped up for me in the exercise was like, oh, I'm hung up on this thing. And then when you ask me why 2 times, I'm like, oh, I'm hung up on something that's not important. I thought,
really?
I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, okay, why do you want to do this? And I'd be like, whatever my answer was. And they're like, but why? And I'm like, I said why. And they're like, but why? kind of thing. It was
work with me here, Keith. Work with
me. Yeah, it really, it drilled down into specifics that maybe hadn't taken time to think about or something. It's something like that. I don't remember the specifics, but it was powerful.
Okay, so I didn't prepare you for this.
Oh, geez.
But do you have anything right now that you're working on that you're finding yourself be kind of stuck in, like an issue that you're having?
I mean, I always feel stuck. Like Groundhog Day, right? No.
Okay, well, let's just go with that. You always feel stuck, maybe?
I always feel like I'm spinning my wheels.
You always feel like you're spinning your
this
wheels.
Ties into me, like, I'm hesitant, I'm very analytical, I'm maybe not going to go forward with something. I'm not just going to jump into something I want it to be right,
Okay.
I think that's part of it.
So why do you feel like you're spinning your wheels?
The epiphany that I came to a little bit was you and the boys are the most important thing to me. And I take a lot of care with how I show up to support you. And it's very important to me. Family is very important to me. I think I may use that as an excuse to not do more and hide a little bit. Because nobody can say to me, if I say family is the most important thing, nobody can really say anything about that. They can't say, well, why don't you do more of this over here? It's like, oh no, because I have to be here for my family. I have to do the dishes. I have to do the laundry, right? there can always be it's an excuse. It can be an excuse.
Okay. So when I asked, why do you feel like you're spinning your wheels? Your response to that is because sometimes I use my family as an excuse to not do things. That
To not do things above and beyond what the family needs.
okay. So then why do you use the family as an excuse to not do things above and beyond? I think you answered it actually, and what you're responding to.
What do you think I said?
What I heard you say was because if I use, say, the family, no one is going to call me on that
Yeah.
as an excuse that's not appropriate
And
or
that's something that
valid.
I've asked myself. I'm like, oh, am I using this as an excuse to hide?
Mm-hmm.
Because who could blame me for being the best husband and father, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a pretty great excuse. And then the next part of that is like, okay, but if I'm not going to show up in other facets of my life or the world, the thing that came up in the Poke the Box book, Seth
Mm-hmm.
Godin's book, I'm like, oh, what am I stealing from other people? Like, what could I be offering the rest of the world that I'm kind of being selfish about by using
Okay.
this excuse kind of thing?
So just kind of going back, why do you think that no one will question using family as an excuse?
I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to give my time and attention to
Yeah.
raising a family.
Yeah, I think that's a societal norm, right?
It feels like to me,
Yeah.
that feels very important to me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's because I want to be there, especially for the kids,
Yeah.
and like support them in however I can.
And so I'm going to ask because I think this is like I think you kind of you see where we're going because you're really do you have intellection as like a one of your strengths? It must
Probably, I don't
okay.
know.
Okay, so why is it important to be there for family?
That's all you got.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And why is family all that you've got?
like 17 Ys now.
No, it's five. I'm counting them. This is five. That's that's the fifth why, Keith.
It feels like the most important thing, and so it's easy for me to put other things aside to be there for you and the kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we've talked about that thing of like you wouldn't want to be the reason I didn't go after something that brought me like joy or
Right.
happiness, right?
Yeah.
Or like worked on a project. So that's kind of what comes up for me when I talk about that. And so I just want to make sure I'm not kidding myself,
Sure.
you know? And I think I'm capable of doing more without my responsibilities to the family suffering.
Yeah. You want to do one for me?
All right, so we're going to try this with you.
We're gonna try it with me now.
Okay, how do we start?
Okay, so I start with defining what the problem is.
Okay,
So
what's your problem, Laura? No.
okay. Okay, so one of my problems is that I have wanted to start writing blog posts, but I find myself not writing blog posts.
Why do you find yourself not writing blog posts?
I think part of the reason I don't find myself writing blog posts is because I don't have a lot of time and I don't know if I have a lot to say.
So why don't you have a lot of time or feel like you have a lot to say?
Um, well, because I am taking my downtime to do other things. So I'm choosing to do other things with my time. And I don't always know if what I have to say adds a lot of value.
So that's kind of that imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
So should we focus on why do you feel like you don't have anything of value to say?
Mm. Um, I feel like a lot of what I think about has already been said, or people that have more experiences than I have, are in a better position to say the things that I think about.
So, why do you think your perspective and your unique voice isn't worth someone listening to?
Mm, because I'm not famous like Mel Robbins, or, I don't work for NPR, or um, this isn't what I do, it's what I live. And so it feels kind of like I kind of have the experiences, but I don't necessarily have the, I don't know, like the professional rigor behind it because I'm doing these things in a specific context and field,
Mm.
right? Like I'm not doing them in the field like NPR, like Mel, Simon Sinek, like Seth Godin, right?
Okay. So, why do you think you need to have a certain pedigree to have somebody pay attention to what you have to say?
Yeah, I think part of it is how I was raised and societal norms around that education equals authority to speak your mind in a certain way, where if you don't have that education to back it up, you aren't the authority on it. And so I think some of it is that.
So, we're at 5, but I'm going to keep going here.
Okay. Okay.
So, why do you feel like you need to have some sort of authority to say something?
Mm, because my experiences are my experiences and they're helpful for me, but I don't want anyone to feel like my experiences are the only way to go about it because it might not be helpful for them in their context. And so I really don't want to put something out there that feels like a paint by number solution that does more harm than good for somebody.
So, do you want to keep going or do you want to kind
It's
of
up to you.
talk?
You can keep
Because I'd
going.
be like, why do you think what you have to say might harm somebody?
Gosh. When I think about it, I think a lot of what I have to say shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I'm pretty clear that it's my perspective. It's been helpful for me. You do you. It's like
It's something you say a lot.
something I say a lot. Like you
Yeah.
do you. It's not something that anyone has to prescribe to Laura's way of doing it. And so I don't know why, like deep down, why I'm worried about that, but I just think I've always wanted to be helpful. And so I think some of it is I don't want to inadvertently have somebody follow or think about something I've said and have it lead them down a path they don't want,
Right. You're kind of taking that on.
even though everyone has agency,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
critical
Yeah.
thinking to
Yeah.
decide what's right for them. But yeah, I do think that's something I don't worry about, but wow,
But
all there from not writing blog posts.
yeah, it might be something that stops you from moving forward with it, right?
Sure.
Another thing where you're like, well, I'm not Mel Robbins.
Not,
How do you think she got to be who she is?
yeah,
By sharing what she thinks and what she has to say,
it's true.
you know?
Yeah, that's true. I will say, as we're talking through, I could see another path that I could have gone down as well around not being a good writer,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
But I didn't go that way.
Well, and that, I
But I
mean,
could have.
you were kind of talking about imposter syndrome a little bit, and that's
Yeah, that's
got
also
a tinge of it there.
tied to writing. Yep.
Oh yeah, I have that too. And um, most creative people have imposter syndrome, and that's just part of the deal. It's along for the ride, and it gets easier and easier to say, "I'm not going to listen to you." Like
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to do this anyway. I mean, honestly, to like kind of bring it all the way back around to something I've probably said a million times, it's like, how do you get like those really small wins? If you think about posting a blog post,
Yeah.
it's not as big as you think because you aren't Mel Robbins.
That's fair.
I post something sometimes, and as I'm about to hit publish, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about this. I'm like, who's going to see this? Like, my biggest problem is that a lot of people see this. Okay, send. like okay.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that share your work, right?
Yeah.
Share your work.
That's something I'm been trying to work on. I mean, obviously with the
Sure.
podcast, it's working in public and the process is the point. And people like seeing other people's process. Like I know I do, and I've brought it up. It's like I love watching people make things, even if it's something I would never make.
Yeah.
You know,
I spent time watching somebody make ice cream cones, like in a big bakery thing.
like the actual cone or
Yeah,
the
the actual
cone with
cone.
ice cream in it.
No, the actual cone.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was
So
like,
you kind of know how to make those.
ooh.
What do you make? The
Oh, cream caca?
Yeah,
Cream caca.
they're
Yep.
basically little ice cream cones.
Kind of, they aren't like,
They're not very sturdy.
and they aren't going to like keep the ice cream in.
You just got to eat it fast.
Apparently.
Yeah. It's fun. I mean, the balance I need to find is not letting the feeling of watching somebody accomplish something replace the feeling I get when I accomplish something.
Right.
That is kind of a tightrope thing because I think it's real and there's probably a name for it. But like there's this thing where if I watch somebody build something, I feel a sense of accomplishment from it too. And then I maybe don't feel as inclined to go out and make something with my own hands. So yeah. This is something to be aware of.
Sure. Maybe just to wrap up the topic as a whole.
Yeah.
One thing we just want to put out there for food for thought, right, is to think about those things in your life that you see as an issue or a problem or a block and think through really being clear about what is it that is the problem you're trying to solve. Try and be really clear about how to define that. And if you don't have a partner like Keith or me across to talk you through those whys, you can do this in a journaling exercise too. Ask yourself those questions of why am I thinking this? Why that? Write yourself a question and answer it. I do that a lot in journaling. That could be one way that you could put this into action and see whether or not it helps you really get to what is that root cause. So then you can start working on it.
Yeah. Going through the process, investigating, right? And then once you find an answer, it may be a little uncomfortable, but sitting in it is better than withdrawing from it. Finding the support you need if it's like really uncomfortable, right?
Right.
You know, sometimes you got to lean into it and rewire those little connections.
Yeah.
Or if I withdraw when like my back is sore and I go lay in bed for a week, it doesn't get better.
No.
Kind of got to go through the process and gently and kindly like work it out.
Well, and sometimes you also need to like consult a professional too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So whether like for me with my ergonomics, a physical therapist,
Yep,
or a therapist, right? Sometimes.
What I'm saying is coming from my personal trainer who is a professional. Right. I am not.
Exactly.
Don't take anything I'm saying as professional advice.
But I do think there's a lot that you can do as well, just individually. The thing that we got to when you were asking why is for me, I think those are some things I'm going to have to journal on in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, keep the process going.
Right, keep the process going and really digging into why am I concerned about this, right? And what am I willing to move forward with? That might be the first step for me.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up with a quote today.
I like that. That sounds great.
I'll get the quote box here.
Okay. Grab one. That's good. What do you have over there, Keith? Okay.
This is a good one. This is lighten the mood a little. If there's something that makes you laugh, then every day is going to be okay. From Tom Hanks.
Why does that speak to you today?
It's good to not be so serious all the time. I feel like sometimes I get a little serious on here because we talk about some important things, but I'm also fairly lighthearted and I love a good laugh. And I love a good comedy, whether it's stand-up or a show or whatever. So, yeah. Laughter can really lighten you up, I think. So, what do you got?
Okay, my quote is, "With the new day comes new strength and new thoughts," by Eleanor Roosevelt.
Ooh, she's one of your favorites.
She's one of my favorites. I really like this. It makes me really, it ties back, I think, really nicely to what we're talking about, the why.
Yeah.
Because through that process, I think you really can gain some strength because you're working on understanding what your current thoughts are so you can develop new thoughts and new action. So I like that. With new day comes new strength and new thoughts.
Yeah, I like it.
Me too.
All right, let's get out of here.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
But it comes back to, if I don't know if I'm actively not doing things or if I just don't have the capacity. Like, I don't know if I have the executive functioning skills to do more. Do you know what I mean? I heard that on the podcast and I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of like me. I just don't want to waste people's time, right?
Yeah, I get that.
It's probably another block of mine. They good?
I think so. Outro music. Ba-doom.